Hello there, and welcome to a very busy pre-election edition of Telile 24/7. I'm your host, Adam Cook. We're going to be spending our next two episodes hearing from the candidates running in the ridings of Richmond and Inverness as we head towards the final election day of August 17th. This week, we've got an Inverness candidate for you, the NDP's Joanna Clark, as well as three candidates running in the riding of Richmond. Trevor Boudreau for the Progressive Conservatives, Matt Haley for the Liberals, and to kick things off, the woman who has spent the past 4 years as the MLA for the riding of Cape Breton-Richmond, first as a PC, now as an independent, and she would like to claim the riding of Richmond as an independent MLA. Her name is Alana Paon. Let's go to Martinique Provincial Park Beach to join her now. Alana, you formally announced that you were running again for the riding of Richmond late in the summer, and as a matter of fact, on the first day of the actual election campaign. Can you give us a sense of why you made your decision at that time and what was involved in making your decision to reoffer for the riding of Richmond?
So the decision to me, because this position is really all-encompassing and it does affect everybody around you. So as much as, it's my name on the ballot and it's me who sits in the legislature, the seat, of course, in the legislature belongs to all of us. And I think sometimes, other people may not look at it or think about it in that way. But truly, when I go to the legislature, everyone comes with me. They're there. It's our seat. And as well, when you are in this position, as I mentioned earlier, it's very demanding. And so I wanted to have a very frank conversation again with my family. My mom is 85. She's getting older. Chuck is my fiance. And we have not really spent a whole bunch of time together. We're like two ships passing in the night a lot of the time. He's very busy and so am I. And so I just wanted to make 100% sure that I was going in the right direction. And also there have been a lot of challenges over the last 4 years in being in this position. There's been a tremendous amount of work that I have absolutely loved to do. I love being the MLA when I am permitted to do so unencumbered, I guess is the best way that I can say it. I would love to be able to continue to, another 4 years or 3 years to finish what I started, because there's a lot of work still left on the table with both legislation and constituency files and negotiating projects that, will be in limbo, because whoever gets elected, if it's me, great, the work continues, as it has. And if it's somebody else, then, they have to start from scratch. And it's important for people to understand that it takes a while to be able to get used to the position, understanding, where everything is, how everything works. There's a lot, because there's the office here, and then there's the office in Halifax, there's the legislature, and it's a lot of learning. So the learning curve was very steep, and now that I feel like I'm, well-versed, I've gone through a lot of experiences in the last 4 years, I'm ready to take it on again for the next 4 years. Absolutely.
It goes without saying that this has been a very eventful 4 years for you as the MLA for Cape Breton-Richmond. What are the most important lessons you've learned, either positive or challenges or both, that you think positions you well to be the MLA after Election Day?
Well, I think it's an extension of my life experiences. Life has not been easy. I brought up my son on my own as not a single parent, but an only parent. I went to university, lugging him along with me for, at nighttime, and worked sometimes 3 jobs to try and keep a roof over our heads and, food in our bellies and heat in our, in our house. And so I'm very well versed with the challenges that come with regard to not having been born with a silver spoon in my mouth. There were 5 of us in my family, and my father worked away most of the time on the lake boats. Many people here in Richmond, know my parents, and never heard an unkind word about my mom and dad. So I think for me, having had the experiences of 2 parents who really gave me a strong foundation growing up, living and growing up in this community. And, they say it takes a village to raise a child. I think it takes a village to raise a good politician as well, who, has their focus in the right place, which should always be for the people that you serve. And then when I, became an adult and I had, certain challenges with being an adult, with trying to get my education and take care of my child and make sure that we had, housing and so forth, then, all those experiences that I have lived, my education, the jobs that I've held, in economic development and so forth, it's all transferable skills that assist me in being, I think, a good MLA. Anyone that comes and asks for assistance from me, I always say it doesn't matter to me the color of your shirt. And truly, that has been the case right from the get-go, even though I ran under a political party banner last time around. I would say that when I would go to meetings. Really, I'm probably the least partisan person in the House, is what I used to always say. And sure enough, now, that is true to form. I'm running as an independent, as everyone knows. It wasn't my choice, obviously, to do so. But I have to say that starting off under a partisan banner and learning, what happens in the back rooms, learning how all of that, structure works and protocols, and then becoming an independent and doing a deep dive into how the House, procedures and rules and regulations work for an independent was a real eye-opener for me. There's no transition team that parachutes down to help you to transition from partisanship to non-partisanship. And what I've learned, and it's been quite a gift for me, is that we need to do a massive renovation of our House of Assembly. All houses need to be renovated on occasion. And this one has not been renovated for a very long time. And I don't mean structurally. I'm talking about the rules, the very parliamentary system that we utilize in our democratic, the way that we see democracy.
Alana, as we were setting up for this interview, you and I were talking about how it seems like the repairs that were done to the Lennox Passage Bridge are a bit of a microcosm or a snapshot of how the provincial government looks at Richmond County and deals with issues in the county. Can you expand on that a little bit in terms of issues coming up in this election campaign?
I think it's a provincial, problem with Department of Transportation. Really, I know there's a lot of money and some good work being done on our 100 series highways. It's needed. I'm a proponent for twinning the highways. It's extremely important. We've had way too many people who have lost their lives in certain areas in Nova Scotia due to the highway not be twinned. So, 2 thumbs up for that. When it comes to our rural communities, we have gravel roads, we have the 100 series highways, we have our trunk highways. It's a complex system of interlocking transportation infrastructure, including bridges. And here in our constituency, we are blessed with 2 bridges that open. We have the Canso Causeway that also opens. And here at Lennox Passage, when I was first elected, the bridge was in deplorable condition. But also, it is the case with the Port Royal Bridge. Now, when you're a new MLA and you're coming into the position with 2 multi-million-dollar messes on your hands, and people are upset, and rightly so. These are safety issues. So Lennox Passage Bridge was so bad that you could not open the bridge any longer. It was welded shut. Because if you opened it, basically the steel expands, and so on hot days, you would not be able to close the bridge again if you opened it. So the structure was decaying. The abutments were basically falling inwards, and the steel also, a lot of the steel needed to be replaced. So it was a mega project, and it ended up costing a lot more than they had anticipated, which is why it had to be done over the course of 2 years. And I'm very proud of the work that not only I did, but also in bringing community members from the marinas that were suffering from the fact that boats were no longer able to get through as they had in the past. Our economy was suffering because of it. So again, it's that lack of foresight is that lack of understanding that there is a ripple effect when you don't do the proper planning and proper investments into infrastructure, into healthcare, into housing, into education, all of those things. And again, we've had all kinds of different political parties sitting in government. These are not issues that have happened just in the last 4 years. Political parties perhaps should take a little bit of care when they start finger pointing at one another, and understanding that this problem has long been coming down the pipe. When I go to the doorways, and I love campaigning. I love being able to go to the door and speak with people, especially now after COVID-19. And it feels like we're getting out of jail. It's I feel like I'm on vacation, going door to door, talking to people. It's fantastic. Healthcare is always the primary concern, and we have to put our focus there. But the way I look at things, and maybe it's a bit differently, which both gets me in trouble sometimes because I'm trying to communicate a concept that perhaps somebody else doesn't quite see. But the way I see it with healthcare, with transportation, with all of these things that again seem like massive crises, we have to look at the root of what is causing these crises. And it's not just about, there's not been enough money invested, or it's a lack of planning. We have to take a look at what is causing people to be so unhealthy that, we're utilizing 50% of our budget on healthcare in the province. We do have obviously an aging population, and I know that accounts for some of it. But there's an increasing amount of people who need dialysis. There's an increasing amount of people that need knee replacements, hip replacements. There's an increase on many, many different health issues. Mental health is on the rise. And, I want to talk about what is causing these, what are the causes of these problems? Because if you can get to the root of the issue and fix that at the very foundation level, just like I was talking about the foundation of the rules and procedures of the House of Assembly, if you can fix, what's wrong with the foundation, then it's so much easier to probably see gains in the rest of the departments and the rest of where government has to invest their time, their management, and their money. Healthcare, for example, it's unethical from my perspective, the way that we treat our healthcare workers. When you are talking to healthcare workers who are under gag orders, that they cannot speak with regard to the issues that they are really struggling with, how am I as an MLA supposed to be able to assist with the problem unless somebody feeds me information on the side? I mean, we shouldn't have to try and get our information through, that kind of a source. We should be listening to healthcare workers directly. They're the ones who are providing patient care, and we need to listen to them. They have the solutions. It's not the solutions that come from us and top down. Solutions, as I have found working in economic development, come from the ground up. And I'm a true believer in that. And I think here in Cape Breton, with, in Antigonish, the Coady Institute, but with all the cooperative structures, especially in the Acadian communities, that have historically been a huge part of our way of doing things. I truly believe that it's not just sad, it's just wrong that we are treating people in this manner and telling them to stay quiet on issues that are affecting them and eventually affect all of us, obviously, who are, those who ask for assistance, as patients. With transportation, we've already spoken about that. It's not about, just throwing more money into the budget. Again, there's management issues there with regard to how money is being managed within the department. There are issues, obviously, that we have seen a massive increase in the price in everything since COVID. So we're not going to get the same bang for our buck this year as far as projects. I was astounded when I was first elected that there's not really any prioritization system in place within a Department of Transportation. So many people don't understand this, but as an MLA, it is me who is asked, what roads is it that you think that we should be working on? And so all the road projects that are around the constituency, I negotiated on behalf of the people here in Richmond. And a lot of people don't know that. They think that, those decisions are made by staff, but I'm a huge part of that process. And I'm very grateful that I have been able to grow very healthy and collaborative relationships within all departments, but especially the Department of Transportation, which, again, is a massive amount of the phone calls that come into my office are about roads and bridge issues. We have affordable housing issues for both, families and seniors. I personally think that seniors who, my grandmother grew up. I grew up with my grandmother in our household. My dad, again, being away most of the time, trying to earn a living for all of us to be able to have a good standard of living at home. My grandmother and my mom were the primary caregivers. And so, I grew up really respectful of my grandmothers. I didn't have the opportunity to meet my grandfathers. They had passed away when both my parents were very young from tuberculosis. But my grandmothers were instrumental in my upbringing. My elders in my community, my aunties, my uncles, my tati, they were very, very instrumental in my upbringing. And we were taught to respect our elders. And I think that there is a great deal of disrespect towards our elders in many ways right now. Through not having, enough palliative care facility. Our capacity is just not enough. I mean, it's a great facility that's been a wing opened up in Inverness. Well, I think that we should have that here within Richmond as well. I know that the Villa in St. Anne's does an amazing job with the patients, the residents that are within the long-term care facilities there. We're very fortunate to have them. We're very fortunate. But again, they are not being funded enough so that those nurses, the staff, the CCAs especially, it's just awful with regard to the way CCAs are being treated, because there's just not enough funding and not enough CCAs per patient, and you have CCAs that are just not able to keep up with it. So they're getting sick, they're getting hurt because they're having to do too much. We're asking too much of them. And of course, residents at the end of the day are the ones that are paying for it, right? They're not getting the level of care that they need. And I'm going to say this too, that the government talks a really good game about wanting to keep seniors in their homes. There's all kinds of grants about trying to keep seniors in their homes, whether with, trying to make them more accessible or putting a new roof on and so forth. I have been advocating since the get-go, because when I campaigned in 2017, I remember going door to door in Port Hawkesbury specifically. There's one lady who was cresting her 90s, living at home by herself still, and who was telling me that she couldn't access grants for upgrades because she was only $200 over the threshold. And I thought to myself, this is terrible. This is not right. And I've been advocating for them, which to me seems sensible, to implement a sliding scale system. So if you're $500 over the threshold, then you receive a certain percentage. Maybe you don't receive 100%, but you receive at least something, not nothing. $500 is not going to put a new roof on your house. It's going to take you a while. By the time you're ready to have enough money or save enough money to put a roof on top of your house, your house is probably going to be in deplorable condition. So that has to change from my perspective. The Liberal government that has been in has not wanted to budge on that. And I personally will continue to advocate for that because I think it's absolutely wrong. I'm very concerned with regard to the lack of investment that was made during COVID by the province to assist, tourism, to assist businesses, but in assistance in particular with community halls. And again, I was advocating during COVID that these halls, the Legions, the halls, our fire halls, they had to make do with what they could with, doing kind of Chase the Ace and raffling, but they were not able to do any of their regular fundraising for which takes care of their operational costs. Some halls were able to, do fine because they had a bit more padding in their bank account, but others really, really suffered. And no assistance was provided for community halls. Legions received some through the federal government. I know that the fire halls were doing, again, some of their own fundraising in the ways that they could. But yeah, community halls and fire halls overall really suffered. You still have to pay the light and the heat, and some halls have mortgages attached to them. Those things all still have to be paid, and it's very difficult when you don't have money coming in to be able to do that. During COVID-19, it was an extraordinary experience. This whole 4 years, really, when I think back on it, has been extraordinary.
You've said more than once, not only in this interview but in others, that you've been through a lot in your 4 years and 3 months as an MLA. What keeps you going, not just during that type of period, but during an election campaign like this? What keeps you focused and what keeps you wanting to serve the people as an independent MLA after August 17th?
I have a very difficult time with inequity. And when I'm seeing that occur at the highest levels of our, system of governance, it motivates me to make certain that I do something about it. It also motivates me when I have people who are calling me for assistance and they are being treated inequitably or unjustly. I am motivated to help them. I'm a helper, I think it was Mr. Rogers that's used to say, always look for the helpers. And I want to be a helper. I was brought up to help people. So I'm trained from a young age to help people. It's a natural predisposition. I'm not in this for myself. This position takes a lot of dedication and a lot of determination. You need to be ready to basically put your own life on hold for the most part. If you're really, truly going to give, your best at this position. And this position, again, is as, we're called members of the Legislative Assembly. Really, what does that mean? As a legislator, I'm a lawmaker. My position is to assist in making life better for people by either changing, adapting, or introducing brand new law that will assist people in my constituency and across the province. I personally think that we don't focus enough attention on that. As MLAs, we focus our attention on a lot of other things, and sometimes laws get passed where perhaps there's not enough input by all MLAs. We're not given an opportunity to give enough. That's, again, a whole different conversation about how the system needs to change. Our structure as a whole, and again, we live in a beautiful place. Please don't get me wrong. I'm very grateful for the wind through the trees right now where I'm sitting currently, and I'm very grateful as a woman, the only woman who is a candidate here, that I'm very grateful to be able to put my name on a ballot, because in many places you're not able to do that. And so for me, the main motivator is that I want to be able to help people. I often refer to myself not as a politician, but as a facilitator. I want to make things easier for people. The word facile en français, de faire des choses plus faciles pour tout le monde, to make things easier for all people. And that's, my main motivator. I'm not in this for myself. That seat does not belong to me. It belongs to all of us. And it's been my honor and my pleasure to work on behalf of all of us. Because in my mind, it's we. It's we. It's not them and us. It's just us or we. And I would like to think that more politicians go into the legislature who are thinking more about the collective good than perhaps their own benefits privately.
Thank you, Alana Paon. Staying in the riding of Richmond, we now go to the headquarters of Liberal candidate for Richmond, Matt Haley, in Arishat. And now joining us at his campaign headquarters in Arishat, the Liberal candidate for Richmond in this election, Matt Haley. Thank you for joining us on Telile 24/7, Matt.
Thank you for coming here, Adam. I appreciate the conversation.
No trouble at all. This is not your first crack at elected party politics. You ran for the federal Liberal nomination in Cape Breton-Canso just 2 years ago. Mike Kellaway, now our MP, came up with that one. But I'm just curious as to what attracted you to the Liberal Party, either provincially or federally. What do you think works about the Liberals for you, especially under the leadership of the current Liberal leader, Ian Rankin?
Well, I think what attracts me the most about the Liberal Party is, I share a lot of the values when it comes to some of the progressive platform pieces that they typically have. But I think in Nova Scotia in particular, with the Nova Scotia Liberal Party, what really gets me is it's very much an evidence-based, very cautious and targeted approach to spending and to investments. So that kind of, I come from an engineering background. I'm very much a person who looks at the practical ways to find solutions for problems. Spending to spend is not necessarily an approach I like to take. And so I think that is very much reflected in the party that we see, whether it was under Steve McNeil and now under Ian Rankin.
What made you decide to take a crack at provincial politics at this exact point? And what parts of your Richmond County experience do you feel will help you if you are successful in becoming the MLA on August the 17th?
I live and work in Richmond, and I raised my family in Richmond. So, the biggest reason why I'm running is that, like most people in Richmond, I want to see it grow, and I want to see it, continue to do better. Whether that's through better and more infrastructure, whether it's for care for all the seniors that are family, that are friends, that are neighbors, and then also one of the big reasons why I decided to run this time is when we were going through this pandemic, I saw just how well our premiers, I guess there were two, have managed the pandemic with the help of Dr. Strang, of course. But I think that the steady hand and most importantly the importance, the ability to face tough decisions and make the ones that maybe weren't popular but were the ones necessary. That showed a lot to me from both Steve McNeil and Ian Rankin, and so it's one of the big reasons why I think that they would be the right people for the job for the province, and why I want to work for them to make Richmond better.
Your leader, Ian Rankin, and other senior Liberals have suggested that not only has the party been a steady hand during the course of the pandemic, but that it's also the best position to help Nova Scotia rebuild and recover from the pandemic. And I'm just wondering if you can speak to that, Matt, in terms of how that rebuilding would apply to Richmond County in particular.
Well, I think that number one is fixing attainable goals. I think that a big part of our platform is targeted investments that will make a difference, but that we're not just throwing money at a problem and hoping for the best. And so on a very local level, things like continuing to expand on the internet. By 2023, within the next 2 years, we're going to see most of Richmond County have very, very good access to high-speed internet, and that going forward is going to be a big tool when it comes to starting new businesses and growing. Some of our younger industries. We've got some tech sector jobs starting to grow in the area. Another big focus that the party's very much leaning on, and something that I've been kind of advocating for within the party, is that we need to focus on training the next generation, making sure that the jobs that we're training for are jobs that are going to be around forever, or not forever, but in the future. And that's something that I hear a lot about from local businesses who want trained and qualified workers, but they need them soon. So we need to really invest in opening those positions locally. And lastly, I think tourism is kind of it's an undervalued asset in Richmond County, something that we absolutely have to capitalize on. And I think that one of the big pillars of our rebuilding approach to the economy is going to be investing in tourism. And I think that Richmond needs to be there to capitalize on that.
Matt, I'd like to pick up on the education and training part of your most recent comment there and connect it to some of the roles that you're playing right here on Alma Dam in your daily life. You're officially the coordinator of operations for the Conseil scolaire acadien provincial, the francophone school board serving Nova Scotia, but you're also on the boards of directors for the Arichat Community Development Association and the Petit de Gras Beautification Association. How do you feel that those experiences will help you as an MLA should you be elected?
Right. Well, from a professional point of view, I can tell you that my job on a day-to-day basis is dealing with departments of government to try to fix problems that we face within the school board. And so, on a broader perspective, I think that those contacts, those networks, and that ability to understand government budgeting, government spending, and how different departments will manage them. Knowing who to call when you have an issue within departments, that's an ability that I've picked up over the last 10 years. It's experience that I will certainly be able to bring and hit the ground running. And then also my work through Beautification Society and with Arichat Community Development Association. Finding funding for projects in Richmond County is quite a challenge, and that's something I hear across the board when I talk to community groups and volunteer groups. They are the lifeblood of our county. Every service and activity that's provided in the community, most of them are done by volunteers, and they're having to fundraise for every innovative idea they have, any project they want to bring. And so I really want to be someone who works with them and is proactive with finding funding for them, so that they can continue to provide more services and more activities and bring more infrastructure like the park and playground that we're trying to bring in Arichat.
What are some of the issues that you're hearing on the doorsteps that are really framing this issue, not just for Nova Scotia in general, but for Richmond County in particular, Matt?
Well, I think I could tell you I've knocked on no more than 2,500 doors in Richmond, and it is resoundingly clear that healthcare is kind of top of mind for everyone. Not only on the physician recruitment side, but also when it comes to long-term care and healthcare, home care, and nursing. Nursing is a big thing that comes up very often at the door. The other things would be internet. Certainly, roads and roadsides are something that's top of mind for a lot of people. But I can tell you that the number one issue I hear, maybe even more than healthcare, I hear from seniors who want more support. They want more help, whether that's through housing, access to programs that government offers, navigating grants and different sources of revenue that they can find. Those are challenges that I'm hearing people are facing every day, and a lot of people, on whether they're on single income or just on pensions, they're having a hard time getting through their day to day. So it is certainly something that will be a priority for me. Richmond County has, I think it's 40% of its population is over 60 years old. So we have to make sure that we have, we're providing those services, and like I said, most importantly is just getting access to those services. So making sure that we're proactive with seniors to get them the help they need.
And you mentioned just a couple of moments ago that your day job with the CSAP puts you in contact with several government departments on a daily basis. Is that something you pitch to seniors in particular, but to voters overall, that you know who to speak to and you know how to get things done in a case like that?
For sure. I mean, in particular, in sectors such as, transportation and roads and infrastructure and environment and labor, these are sectors, and education, of course, because I work in education. These are sectors that I know very, very well. The good thing is, while I don't have as much experience in healthcare as I would like to have going into the job, when you knock on 2,500 doors, you meet a lot of healthcare professionals. And every time I do, I spend a lot of time asking them questions, seeing where they think is our next step. Where should we focus? And so I'm very much also learning those sectors that I didn't know so well before the campaign. So I think that when we get to election time, if I'm elected, I'll certainly be able to start on day one and get some of these things moving.
So as we're doing this interview, Matt, we're just 8 days away from the final voting day in this short summer election campaign. At this stage of the game, are you feeling optimistic? How do you feel the campaign has gone for you, and are you looking forward to some good results on election day?
I mean, I feel great, and that's not to say that I have any kind of inkling that I will win or not. I've got a team behind me that's working around the clock. A lot of people putting a lot of time in, a lot of efforts. So, my job is simple this election. I'm going out, knocking on doors, talking to people, seeing what their priorities are, and making sure that we're going to reflect that. And I've got a team that's kind of worried about the logistics of it. But when it comes to advanced polls, I am seeing that people just want to get out ahead of election day. I've been around campaigns enough to know that typically when we talk about advanced polls, there might be some significance one way or the other if people are going to vote early. But in this case, I'm very much seeing that people just want to get ahead of election day. They want to try to avoid the crowds. They've extended hours when it comes to election day, advanced polls, and to the continuing return office. Sorry, and so. And it's a message I get to the doors too. Make sure you get out, vote early, stay safe. That's the key message during this. Well, I mean, we're still in this pandemic, so it's something that I'm also offering to folks.
Well, as we head into this critical home stretch of the campaign, I really do appreciate you giving me some time today. So thank you, Matt Haley, for joining me on Telile 24/7.
Absolutely. Thank you, Adam.
That's Matt Haley. He is the Liberal candidate for Richmond in the August 17th Nova Scotia election. Stay tuned for more Telile 24/7 in just a moment. We were able to catch up with another Richmond candidate for the provincial election, Trevor Boudreau, representing the Progressive Conservatives. And we're pleased to welcome back to Telile 24/7 the Progressive Conservative candidate for the riding of Richmond. He is Trevor Boudreau. Trevor, thank you for joining me on Telile 24/7 today.
Thank you, Adam. I think it's almost been a little under a year since the last time we had a good chat like this, isn't it?
Yes, that's true enough. And I mean, that was shortly after you got the nomination for the PCs here in Richmond County. I know you and your leader, Tim Houston, did quite a bit of touring in different parts of the county. We got to catch up on the marina deck over in St. Peter's. And fast forward a year now, you've been hard at it. How do you feel that this campaign is going? We're 8 days out. We're getting to the finish line. But how do you feel that this campaign's gone for you this summer?
I've been really pleased, and I must say I've been really happy with the graciousness of the people letting us come to their doors and chat with them. So really want to thank the residents of Richmond for having us. I would say the other candidates would say the same thing.
This is not entirely something that was new to you. I mean, you were a town councillor in Port Hawkesbury for 7.5 years, so you got to know a lot of what local people are facing. Can you give me a sense, though, what people are talking about at this moment, or even what they were talking about when you started knocking on doors in February? What are some of the issues that are framing this campaign for you in Richmond?
Healthcare has been the number one issue at the door. And I'm using healthcare in a general sense, right? So there are a lot of healthcare issues, right? We can talk about doctor shortages. We can talk about ambulance and critical code that's been going on. We can talk about long-term care beds. We can talk about mental health issues. All of these are at the door, and they're very real. Along with a lot of the social determinants of health. So we can talk a bit more, affordable housing and housing in general has crept up a little bit more, and for good reason, right? COVID has really shone a light on areas that we have struggled as a province and maybe as a country. And so long-term care being one of them, but affordable housing and housing in general has crept up. I'll tell you, the more rural I get, and I've tried to hit every single rural door. And by rural, I mean, those small areas in Framboise and Sterling and Lockwood. Sure. And I'll tell you, access to essential services like internet and cell coverage are crucial. And if we want to attract people to our region and we want to grow our population, we need to have those essential services. And so those were there in the beginning. When I started knocking on doors in February, and they're loud and clear right now as well.
Well, let me pick up on one of those issues that you mentioned, and that being healthcare, partly because your leader, Tim Houston, has made this a centerpiece of his campaign. Of course, there's an aggressive strategy that the Progressive Conservative Party has put out to deal with healthcare. Even early in the campaign, one interviewer asked each of the three leaders, what is your number one priority? If you could only do one thing if you're elected premier, what would that be? And Tim Houston didn't waste a moment. He said, fix healthcare. Now, you've been involved in physician recruitment with the Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health Committee. So coming into this that it's not simply a matter of flicking a switch and all of a sudden everybody has a doctor, long-term care is taken care of. But what do you feel about your experience at that level in terms of physician recruitment, lines up well with what you're seeing from Mr. Houston and the PC party in terms of healthcare priorities locally and provincially.
It was a big priority in 2019. We recognized kind of the challenges we were facing. And I was kind of volunteered to actually go to the Royal Society of Physicians conference that was being held in Halifax to attract doctors. So my wife, Sarah, who's a pharmacist, and I were the representatives for the Strait area. We went to this conference and it was an eye-opener. There were 40 other booths from across Canada, all rural areas, and they were all struggling to attract doctors too. And they had been at it for a number of years, and we didn't know what we didn't know. And so I learned a lot there. And fast forward a couple of months later, then we start meeting some of our colleagues in Richmond County and at the Dr. Kingston Memorial Health Center to really start talking about it as a region. And because really doctors, there's no borders with doctors. It's not like you have a doctor in Port Hawkesbury and they're not supporting people in Richmond. And so this collaborative approach of Cape Breton South Recruiting from Health kind of started there. And right off the go, you know, we talked about not just recruitment, we talked a bit about, you know, the other healthcare providers that could support health in our community. And what are some ways we can change how we do healthcare in rural Nova Scotia. But really, crisis happened because we were short doctors and we were going to be losing another doctor. And so that became kind of the main focus for our region, but and for our community. You know, having Maggie McDonald as a navigator, that probably solved a lot of problems for us. We were all at it at the side of our desk because we were all working and we were all volunteers. And having Maggie has really helped us shape our processes better, our policies better, and making sure that we're informed. This really aligns with what Tim Houston and the PC party are saying, is that, you know, attracting and retaining healthcare practitioners and physicians especially, right? We're talking about almost 70,000, maybe it's over 70,000 people without a doctor right now. And our plan talks about recruitment and attraction of doctors. It talks about making sure we pay them well. So what we will know is that rural family physicians aren't paid to the same level as specialists or even rural family physicians in other provinces. And so when you're trying to attract someone who may have $200,000 or $300,000 in debt, you know, making sure they have income that they can pay off their debt while starting a family and while, you know, building a practice, that's important. And so that's one component. But, you know, it's really about making sure our healthcare family is valued, right? So we have attracted a couple of doctors here, and one of our missions is to make sure we retain. And so how do we take care of the doctors who are here and the nurses who are here? And you'll probably see some promotion about some barbecues coming up to support healthcare workers from Cape Breton South Recruiting from Health. And that's, you know, that's a big part of what we're doing is that. And Tim Houston and I had that conversation early on when him and I were meeting about me becoming a potential candidate. It's, you know, healthcare was on top of my mind. It resonated really well, and that's kind of how we formed this alliance, and how I know that Tim is the right person. Our vision of healthcare aligns very well, and yeah, we'll see where this plays out. But I think we have the right people, we have the right mix of healthcare providers as candidates. We have a team that wants to put healthcare first, and we're all on board. We're ready to go.
You spoke about the team effort, Trevor, and I want to concentrate on that for a little bit based on your experience with Port Hawkesbury Town Council, not just with the Cape Breton South Recruiting for Health Committee, but you and I both know that over your time in your 2 terms as a town councillor, some difficult decisions had to be made, some even more difficult than others. I've spoken to other town councillors about sleepless nights and difficulties like this. So can you give me a sense on what some of the more valuable lessons that you've learned from these times as a town councillor have been that you think would work well for you, not just as an MLA, but working in either a party caucus or a government caucus? How do you feel that the give and take of municipal government may have prepared you for provincial government?
So it's about building relationships with people. It's about collaborating. It's about understanding the issues from another perspective. I think, you know, when I went into municipal politics, you know, I have my opinions and I have my thoughts on how everything should roll. But what I learned a lot was it's really important to make sure you understand how everybody everybody else is taking an issue or how everybody else is feeling about something, because then you get a better perspective of making informed choices, right? When you're making decisions, whether it's on budget or policy or, you really have to understand why you're making the decisions you're making and how it impacts people. And so, just working with municipal staff and municipal council and you get a lot of how the works, right? And then you're having to collaborate with your neighbors, neighboring municipalities. You're having to collaborate with different levels of government and staff at different levels of government. And you're not always going to agree on the first time, the second time, the third time. And sometimes it takes that collaborative effort and those disagreements to come to the best solution. And so how you deal with a team, right? Regardless of party or no party, you're going to have to be working as a team, right? The decisions that you make aren't one person decisions, and they shouldn't be. You're a team with your constituency, with the residents, the businesses. And if you can't work as a team with people, you're really going to have to struggle being a successful MLA. Right? So my approach has always been about collaboration. It's always been about the people and how it impacts people. And I'm going to continue that in my role if I'm elected MLA.
Last question to you, Trevor, and I've been asking this to all the candidates here in Richmond. Is there a single ballot question that defines this election either for Richmond or for Nova Scotia? Is there one or two things that people might look at and say, this is the issue on which I will base my decision, and this is why I've chosen this particular candidate to be my MLA? Do you get the sense that there is one or two ballot questions this time around?
To me, to a number of my colleagues, this is kind of like a referendum on healthcare. If you feel that Nova Scotia has been very successful with healthcare and with long-term care and with mental health and affordable housing, that I think for rural Nova Scotia, I think we're struggling. We find that a lot of decisions are being made in Halifax. The change to One Health Authority has really impacted our ability to make decisions here. And the further away you make decisions about healthcare in an area, the less informed it is. And so that's the ballot question. But I also I will say what has come up at the door a lot, because when you're running for a party, there are people who go for the party no matter what, and then there are people who are really coming at the door and they're saying we're really looking at the person. I think there's a little bit of a shift here in terms of how people are voting. I think people are saying, you know what, we want to look at all the candidates, we want to understand their skill set, we want to know what their experiences are about, because we want to be able to trust them, we want to be able to know that they care, and we want to be able to know that they're up for the job. So if I was to pick number two that I'm hearing, it's about making sure they pick the right candidate.
You sound very optimistic. We're 8 days out from the election. How are you feeling as we wrap this up and as you get ready for the final day of voting on August 17th?
I can tell you, when you run municipally, and when I ran municipally, I tried to do it all on my own. I had some building signs and I had some, but I knocked on every door on my own. You couldn't do that without a team here. And I'll tell you, this has been quite the experience. We're energized, we're positive. You'll have a day where you're exhausted at the end of the day, and then you're up at 5:30 ready to go in the morning. And it's because you have that motivating factor of all this support and all this momentum that you feel. And whatever the results, I've left it all on the table, and I want no regrets. And so if at the end of the day I'm not successful, I just hope that whoever is elected is successful, because our Strait area will be much better off with a successful MLA here in Richmond and a successful MLA in Inverness and the other parts of the area, right? So to me, I think I'm excited. Democracy is at work, and everybody gets a chance to vote. And of course, I hope for me, but at the end of the day, I really just hope they vote. And this has been fun. If you don't enjoy knocking on doors and visiting people and having these conversations, I'm not sure this is the right job for you. And this is right in my element, and I feel like I'm at home, and people have been welcoming me to their door, and that's regardless of how they're going to vote, they've been so good, and I'm leaving with a great in the last 8 days, I'm hoping it keeps going the same way, and I'm going to leave with a very positive attitude, regardless of the outcome.
We will have NDP candidate for Richmond Bryson Syllaboy on the next edition of Telile 24/7, but we're pleased to be able to bring you this interview with the NDP candidate for the neighbouring riding of Inverness, which now includes the town of Port Hawkesbury. Here's the NDP candidate for Inverness, Joanna Clark. And joining us on a campaign stop in Port Hawkesbury is the NDP candidate for the riding of Inverness, which now includes Port Hawkesbury. Joanna Clark is with us on Telile 24/7 today. Thank you for joining us, Joanna.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here, and I want to begin by asking you, how did you decide to take your first crack at elected politics this time around, and what made the NDP a good fit for you in running for Inverness?
Kind of in like the most weird way, I guess, and I think the pandemic has a lot to do with it. I've done a lot of work with student politics in the past, and so I kind of am familiar with the NDP platform in that way, just because they kind of are the ones that are most looking out for students. So that's kind of my first introduction. And the reason that I wanted to run now is because I feel like increasingly over the past 5 years, but really over the last 2, young folks are just getting so much, blame or being put down in a way, and they're, being told that they don't care, they're not motivated, and all of these kinds of things. And so I felt like as a young person right now, it's the perfect opportunity to just put my name forward and have a conversation started about young folks and, just proving that we're not apathetic and we care about politics and we are really looking forward to a future where there's success and there's validation towards our opinions.
Even though you're running in Inverness, our viewers in Isle Madame might recognize you because you were a student at Université Sainte Anne's Isle Madame campus at La Picasse in Petit de Gras, and during that time you served as an executive on the board of directors for the Canadian Federation of Students. So I'm just curious as to how you feel that particular experience translates well for you as you get ready for your first crack at elected politics with this NDP run.
Yeah, I think it's not a super hard jump. I think that's what I've been telling a lot of folks is, I am young, but I have a lot of experience. And so I started with student politics just on my own student council at St. Anne, which was really fun. And it was really just an interesting way to get a behind the scene looks into how post-secondary education works and how it's run. And then through that, I started working with the Canadian Federation of Students. And that allowed me to really look really into even deeper how things work and how, governments are prioritized in budgets and all of those things. And a lot of the issues that we've been advocating for at the Canadian Federation of Students really just ties into now me running right now. A lot of the conversations are around housing and internet and childcare, healthcare, and so they're not that far apart, even though now, as someone who's running as MLA, I wouldn't just be representing students, I would be representing even a more diverse group of constituents.
So how is the campaign going so far, Joanna? What kind of reception are you getting as you're knocking on doors across Inverness County and Port Hawkesbury?
It's been interesting because I've definitely never run a campaign at this level. I'm used to just small university campus, but I think it's been going well. I've done just a bit of door to door, and I've been hearing, a lot of concerns and things that I've maybe not even considered myself because it hasn't really affected me in that way. But it was good to hear those, and I'm happy to bring them forward to the party as well. And so, yeah, it's been interesting too that I've actually had a little more positive reception than I thought I was going to get. So yeah, that was really nice to hear that folks were looking for a change and happy to have this conversation.
Joanna, part of the reason we're doing this interview here at Tamarack Education Centre in Port Hawkesbury is because this place hits home for you for a number of reasons. You've been a substitute teacher here, but you're also a young mother yourself. You have a 4-year-old daughter. So what do you feel that the NDP platform offers for young families and those with school-aged children during this particular election campaign and beyond?
Childcare, especially licensed childcare, is such a it's kind of like a luxury, and it's like luck of the draw if you're able to access it here. So when you see that in a platform where they're looking to have licensed childcare in rural areas, which is really good, and to make it affordable for families is also extremely important. Childcare has always been difficult for me, just as a single mom and in university and things like that. So it's always been something I've struggled with, and I actually sit on the daycare board in Port Hood for the Bayview Child Care Development Center. And so I've really gotten even more to know about like how childcare works in the province. And so while I am very happy with what's seen in the platform, I think that we still also have a lot more work to do to ensure that licensed childcare centers are supported, their workers are supported. A huge thing, which is also highlighted in the NDP platform, is the wage disparity between folks who are working in daycare centers and folks who are working in the pre-primary program. And so I think that is a huge thing that has to be tackled within the very near future. Otherwise, we will see a huge decline in licensed childcare centers that are able to provide care.
What other parts of the NDP platform do you really feel would serve Inverness County well as you're running in this particular election?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think as we head into, a recovery from COVID, which I know folks are really tired of hearing of, but I think that we're finally at a point where people are seeing the light kind of at the end of the tunnel. And I know that there is a huge priority being put on ensuring that emergency rooms are staying open, having, improved retention and recruitment of doctors especially in rural areas. Childcare, again, is so important. And I think like as we see things opening up and people are starting to recover, there's a lot of change that has to happen. And in some cases, a lot of these decisions are going to be thought as bold or kind of maybe too much. But I think that we're at a point that it kind of has to go that way if we want to see a positive change happen.
Joanna, not that long ago, you got some campaigning in locally with the leader of the New Democratic Party, Gary Burrell. What do you think would work for the people of Nova Scotia and for Inverness County if he became the premier?
Yeah, that actually was extremely helpful. I was super nervous. And I know even when we were canvassing, he was like, "Oh, I'm talking too much." And I was like, "No, I'm really happy for you to just show me the reins." And he was so supportive of me and it being my first time running as a candidate. And I think he has a lot of experience. And I think he has a lot of experience that would be, just really offer a change to folks. And I think that he really has taken the time to talk with a diverse group of folks. I know that the party prioritizes talking to students. And so he really takes the time to ensure that all the voices are being heard, and is just somebody who wants to see the best for Nova Scotia as a whole. And I think that he's done a really good job of also listening to rural voices, which I think for me, that's another reason I'm running is, rural Cape Breton, those voices matter. We are constituents in the province. And just because, we don't have the big malls or whatever it may be, like the priorities, we still need to be prioritized and recognized as valid constituents and folks that matter.
Joanna, obviously, one of the most difficult challenges in running in this riding is that it's a huge riding. It now includes the town of Port Hawkesbury for the first time in 8 years. And of course, you go from Port Hawkesbury all the way up to the Cape Breton Highlands, up to Meat Cove. What kind of challenge has that been like for you, and how has the experience been like in learning how to represent people from all across the riding of Inverness?
Yeah, that's been probably the toughest part. And to be honest, I didn't actually realize like how far the riding came into Port Hawkesbury until I saw the signs. And so I was kind of like overwhelmed and taken aback. But I think, you just do the best you can. And yeah, as far as like, I think the geographic location and the groups that it encompasses is also a little bit challenging. As you said, and as you mentioned, going up into Sheddy Camp and also including Wakaba in that. And so knowing that there's, folks who have a strong connection to Acadian culture as well as Indigenous folks and, trying to make sure that that's represented, I think is extremely important. And so I think my most important message is that I'm not an expert in either of those things, but I recognize that both of those cultures hold, a special place and barriers that are unique to them. And so I think one thing I've learned about my time in student politics is being able to kind of outsource and not pretend to be the expert, and really forming, partnership, collaboration, coalition, whatever it may be, in order to have experts informing you on the issues that are unique to them, and not being the person that's narrating that, but just kind of amplifying what's been said. And so I think that is an extremely important part to understanding the folks that are in this riding.
You mentioned Shetticamp, and you have an advantage that not many candidates have had in Inverness over the years. You are fluently bilingual. So can you tell me a little bit about what that experience has been like, being able to communicate with the French Acadian population in Shetticamp as you're connecting with them in this particular election campaign?
I mean, I think it's really handy because it has informed me in a few different ways. When we speak exclusively about French, I've had the opportunity to study at Saint Anne for 7 years, and also to take courses that kind of give me a little bit of background on what it means to be in a situation where your language is the minority. And so just understanding kind of the challenges or the injustice in a way that brings to communicating and being able to communicate in your first language, and knowing that that's extremely important. But kind of, as I mentioned, I think that does lend well also to when we consider Indigenous folks in this, and understanding that there is a diverse group of people that need to be heard, and that's extremely important.
On a similar note, Joanna, we're not that far removed from La Fédération Acadienne de la Nouvelle-Écosse, La FAN, pushing for a new riding in Shetticamp as opposed to having it included in the Inverness riding. What are your thoughts on the concept of a separate constituency for the people of Shetticamp to be able to recognize their French Acadian culture?
I've reached out to the lawyer on that project. I have yet to be able to talk to him. It's just been extremely busy, but I don't want to go out and say that it's going to happen, but I do recognize that is extremely important, and I think that it is something that folks who are running do need to understand and consider that as a true possibility, because we have seen other Acadian folks get a riding, and I do understand, I've lived in Clare for a bit, and I've studied in other parts where Acadian culture is very prevalent, and so I think that is something that is extremely important and is a very valid concern, and I totally am in support of having that conversation and understanding what's needed on this side to ensure that could be a success in the future.
So, Joanna, as we head into the home stretch of this election campaign, how do you feel about your chances on election day, and what do you feel you've gained from this campaign experience, win or lose?
Yeah, I think I'm just looking at this like win or lose. It's been a great experience, and I know, if I don't win this time, everybody's going to see my name next time, hopefully. But I think that regardless, it's been extremely just like a really good opportunity to have this conversation started where, there is more option. I think often, I want to speak only to the riding, but I think like often we think of just conservative or liberals, and the NDP does have a strong platform, and we're at the best time to make a change. And so even if that doesn't go my way and sees me elected, I think that it's been a great opportunity to start a conversation and to really have people have the option to really have a choice other than one or the other. And so I think that's been the best thing, and the most valuable thing I take from this is just that, we had the conversation, and folks were able to really just think like what is important, and we are in a time where that's like the number one thing when we're recovering from such an interesting past 2 years.
We've covered a lot of ground in a short time, Joanna. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap all this up?
Yeah, I think the only thing I really have to say is I think when folks look at me, they probably think, wow, she's really young, but I do have a lot of experience, and I'm extremely passionate about, making a difference and having a positive spin on things. And so I know that as an MLA, if elected, I would definitely prioritize all folks. I have a lot of experience with just so many different groups of people, and I think that that's lent well to this, and I would be extremely excited to have the opportunity to represent folks and ensure that their voices are just amplified in the decision-making spaces that we have.
Joanna Clark, good luck the rest of the way, and thank you so much for giving us some time here on Telile 24/7 today.
Thank you so much.
And that wraps up the first of our Telile 24/7 pre-election specials. We hope that you found this very helpful, and we look forward to talking to you again soon with more candidates from Richmond and Inverness. For now, I'm Adam Cook. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time on Telile 24/7.